You are the only censor. If you don't like what I say, you have the choice. You can turn me off.
A lot of people are waking up to the fact that modern pop culture sucks, and I'm one of them. A lot of people have also talked about rediscovering older entertainment to avoid financially supporting companies that produce modern pop culture. I think this is a great idea, and the next logical step in showing your dissatisfaction with Hollywood. I mean, look, Lucasfilm is developing an anti-cop movie, and Warner Brothers is hiring one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. If you think Hollywood is going to listen to you, you're deluded. Don't pay attention to modern Hollywood, and don't support it. As a POC myself, a preserver of culture, pop culture preservation is my goal. I'm going to recommend older entertainment for people to experience that isn't affected by modern culture or modern Hollywood, and I hope you find the channel useful. For this video, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. No, not that one. The return of Star Trek Discovery. Let's face it, this is a terrible show. I couldn't even force myself to get through the second season, and I'm not going to waste my time with a third. Neither should you. There are plenty of people suffering for your entertainment by watching and reviewing the show. I propose something different. I propose you watch something good. And I hear you shouting, "Watch the Orville." I already have. I want to recommend something that you probably haven't seen. Right now, I'd like to talk about a show called Blake 7. It was created by this guy. You probably don't know who he is, but you might if I tell you he also created these. His name is Terry Nation, and he worked at the BBC. No, not this one. This one. The one that actually cared about quality, albeit while letting their employees have their way with children. It's a show where a small crew on a highly advanced spacecraft travel a galaxy dominated by a political structure known as the Federation, and they encounter alien races in a series of weekly adventures. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Even the logo is similar, just turned on its side. But that's where the similarities end. Blake 7 features a group of characters that want to overthrow the existing power structure, the Federation, and establish something new. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? In this case, though, it's actually justified, as the Federation is an actual evil empire that controls its citizens through propaganda, drugs, and brainwashing. It also frames them for crimes when people criticize the Federation. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? For example, when the main character Blake is arrested in the first episode, he thinks he's being arrested for going outside the dome, which is a crime. But as it turns out, Blake has been arrested and framed for doing the same kinds of things that Cuties watchers do. So yeah, this show doesn't fuck around. And off Blake goes, exiled to a prison planet for the rest of his life. Quite an origin story. So, if the Federation is so vile and reprehensible, we must have heroes worth rooting for that want to bring it down, right? Well, yes and no. In Blake 7 we have Blake, framed by the Federation because he witnessed Federation troopers kill people who were forming a rebellion. Jenna, arrested for being a smuggler and skilled pilot who is expected to trade sexual favors to the captain of the prison ship that Blake is on to stay alive, which is the closest thing this show gets to a romance. Gan, your Little John type character, a strong man who's basically had a V-chip installed in his brain to stop him murdering after he killed the guards that raped and murdered his wife. Villa, a typically cowardly thief who uses his wits to survive and just wants to get as far away from the Federation as he can. Avon, an amoral computer expert who just wants everyone to leave him the fuck alone. Callie, the only non-criminal of the crew, a psychic alien and the only surviving member of a faction rebelling against the Federation after they were bombed with chemical poisons. She joins the crew after being talked out of a suicide attack. Sen, the computer of their ship, the Liberator, who generally sounds bored while talking to them, and Orak, another computer they acquire in the series, who generally sounds annoyed while talking to them because he thinks the crew are stupid. So it's not exactly the crew of the Enterprise D, or the Discovery, but at least they're memorable, have interesting backstories, and each character feels unique. What does STD have? The alien, Saru, who's mostly remembered because of the actor who portrays him, the gay one, the math one, Astar the they're dead, the Klingon, the Mirror Universe one, Lisa Left Eye, and Mikey Spock, the Red Ink Angel. They're all defined by their identities. I mean, do we know anything about Lisa Left Eye after 3 years of Discovery? In Blake 7, we learn to understand the nature of the characters and how they interact almost instantly. When Blake, Avon, and Jenna escape in the Liberator, Blake immediately wants to follow the prison ship and free the other prisoners. Avon wants to abandon them and escape. In 10 seconds, the story exemplifies the nature of their characters while giving us a nice bit of tension as they set up the Blake-Avon dynamic of the show. We see Jenna support Blake and watch as they quickly learn to trust and rely on each other, again defining their relationship. Jenna is a valued and skilled member of the crew and treated as an equal, not as a better. The crew in Blake 7 feel like they're integral to the running of the ship, and that they're interdependent. We certainly don't have Blake running around by himself for a whole episode because he doesn't need the rest of the crew.
I might be angry about it. I'm supportive. I'm so supportive.
So, the characters are one of the best reasons for watching the show. Why? They're memorable, and even though they're criminals, they're heroic. Better yet, they're not written as idiots. Avon might not want to take on the Federation every time Blake does, but he doesn't mutiny against the rest of the crew and start a war with the Federation because he thinks he's right.
I'm sorry.
Best of all, these are characters who feel competent. They think rationally, don't need to be told what to do, and don't need anyone to rescue them.
Michael? Yeah, it's me.
For the most part, they feel like they're real people who are fighting for a cause they genuinely believe in. There's no posturing about how they're the bestest ever. No grandiose speeches with meaningless buzzwords. No cringe-inducing one-liners.
Yes, that is Starfleet.
They interact instead of talk down to each other. Well, except Avon. Avon can be a bit of a dickhead, but he's my kind of dickhead. And that's reflected in Avon and Blake's mildly contentious relationship. Avon is constantly calling Blake out on his bullshit. And the refreshing thing is that Blake needs it from time to time, and we as the audience can see that Avon sometimes has a point, especially as Blake starts believing in his own growing legend, and it's nice to see that even the main character isn't perfect. If it sounds like I don't like Avon, I do. He's a cynic, but he'll occasionally crack a smile, and he's one of my favorites. But there are some others worth mentioning. I haven't even talked about the villains yet. There's the Federation as a whole, but there's its leader also. It's led by her, Servalan. Yes, the evil Federation is led by a woman. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? She is attractive, charming, and utterly ruthless. I'm surprised a certain subsection of the internet hasn't made her their role model. Maybe it's because of her thin privilege? And, as all great villains do, she has a henchman, Travis, that she uses to relentlessly hunt Blake. Travis has a history with Blake and wants revenge against him so badly that it causes him to spontaneously switch actors between seasons. So, we've established that the characters are great. But why else is it worth watching? Well, for the stories, obviously. It's not serialized in the same way a show like Babylon 5 or Deep Space Nine is serialized, but we do see the crew as they tentatively start out exploring the galaxy and watch as their legend grows. We watch them as they gain confidence in their abilities to work together and see Blake grow into a real leader. It's even reflected in their wardrobe, as they start out pretty much dressed like hobos, and later on, they're dressed in pimpin' 70s space clothes. As Blake becomes a better leader, he starts making long-term plans. For example, in one episode, instead of rescuing someone and taking them on the ship, he sets them up in a position of power and says he'll come back in 3 years to get some help and resources from them. Actual long-term strategic planning. And this gives some credibility to the characters and help builds the story arcs. Yes, there are actual story arcs and not mystery boxes which lead somewhere and don't jerk you around. We even see some of the side effects of their life. Another semi-serialized aspect is Travis relentlessly hunting the crew, and the crew constantly being on the run. We see the toll that the stress takes on the crew, and how they even start to depend on drugs to keep them awake. It's not an overt aspect of the show, but I like the fact that they would casually drop hints about it and show our heroes as flawed, trying to cope the best they can, even if they're not doing it in the right way. Lastly, we have other characters behaving in a realistic way. Not everyone loves Blake and his crew. Not everyone supports him. We see people playing along, but ready to sell them out at the drop of a hat. It gives an extra air of believability to the universe that not everyone instantly flocks to Blake's crew, and are out for themselves in a corrupt empire. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The first season is very strong and builds up slowly. The crew and the ship as a regular dynamic aren't even a regular thing until about 4 episodes into the first series. A particular favorite of mine is Mission to Destiny, which is a bit like an Agatha Christie murder mystery and a showcase for Avon. The second season is arguably the strongest, a nice change from modern television actually, and Pressure Point is the best episode of the season. It demonstrates Blake's previously mentioned fallibility as he becomes overconfident and starts believing in the legend that's swelling up around him. The third season is probably the weakest, but City at the Edge of the World is one of my favorite episodes of the series. It's a great episode for Villa, it's funny, and has a mini Doctor Who convention featuring the guy who played the Black Guardian as a hippie, and Colin Baker as a space pirate who looks like he'd be more comfortable on stage with Judas Priest circa 1984. The fourth season is a return to form, as Avon shows real growth. He becomes almost as good a leader as Blake, and even starts to convince worlds to form a sort of Star Trek-like federation to take on the evil Federation. And the hilarious part is that he goes through all of this rigmarole because he still just wants people to leave him the fuck alone. This season also features, without offering any spoilers, the absolute 100% bravest and most daring finale to a TV series ever made. It's my personal favorite, but I don't know how other people feel about it. Now, some people may be watching this video who are familiar with this show already and wondering why I'm leaving certain things out. And I'm leaving out quite a bit. And that's because I'd like people to go in unspoiled. So don't fucking spoil it for them. It's a show that reflects a specific time in society in a way that Discovery doesn't even attempt to. Britain was going through its winter of discontent in the late 1970s at the time this was being made, and there was a real sense of frustration with the leadership in the UK. There were rampant strikes, it was the coldest winter in 16 years, punk was everywhere, and it seemed like the country was falling apart, so much so that it even led to the election of Margaret Thatcher. And Blake 7 certainly reflects some of the pessimistic outlook of the time. But even in a galaxy that seems utterly corrupt and unfair, it still gives us a morally centered, honest, and decent main character that we can root for, never loses faith, and strives to be the better man. And I have genuinely fond memories of looking forward to each weekend so I could watch another episode in the winter as I was growing up. Given that it's over 40 years old, it can't hope to compete with Discovery in terms of special effects. But STD has more lights designed to bombard and overstimulate our senses than the Hong Kong Harbor Light Show. But, as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention, and this show invented some cool concepts, cool stories, and cool characters. It's a monument to a time when quality actually mattered. Sure, you were allowed to explore political themes, and this show does as well, but it does it in a way that isn't insulting to the audience, and it doesn't treat them like idiots. Nor does it insult the audience if they disagree with the theme. This show is like a warm, comfortable blanket, and I can slip into the plot of any episode quickly and easily. I can barely remember what happened in any episode of Discovery, except that it hates me.
Just relax and let me do.
And what do we think of people who hate us? Bad luck, Fale?
Fuck 'em!
As an aside, I'd like to give a special thanks to the BBC for copyright claiming my video as soon as I posted it and making me replace every single bit of video I included from Blake 7, even the bits that didn't include dialogue. So thank you very much, you fucking bunch of goofs. Also of note is the music of Dudley Simpson, who was doing the music for Blake 7 and this show at the time, and it is great if you're fond of that era of production at the BBC. So, where can you watch it? Well, it's currently streaming on BritBox, which is available for viewers to sign up for in North America. But don't give the BBC money. DVDs are also available on Amazon.ca, .com, and .uk, but try and buy them used. Don't give the BBC money. This is going to be the first in what I hope is a long list of videos featuring older entertainment that people may not know about. If you have suggestions, put them in the comments. I also have my own ideas on things I want to cover in the future as well. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Share the video if you enjoyed it. And remember, don't subscribe to Paramount Plus. Defund the BBC and defund the CBC.